He spoke without thinking. The alien queen smiled softly and said, "Yes, I accept." Captain Marcus Holden stood at the edge of the great hall, his boots clicking softly against the stone floor. The air around him hummed with energy, charged with the tension of the moment. Humanity's future, and possibly its survival, rested on the outcome of this meeting. He had been sent to negotiate a peace treaty between the humans and the Veltran Empire, an alien species known for their military might and mysterious ways. Marcus had seen plenty of tough situations in his career, but nothing quite like this. The Veltran queen, known as Queen Celara, sat across from him on her throne. She was an imposing figure, tall and elegant, with skin that shimmered faintly in the low light of the room. Her eyes were deep, almost too deep, as if she could see right through him. Her expression was calm, unreadable, but her presence was overwhelming. Every word she spoke carried weight, and her every move was calculated. Marcus couldn't help but feel small in her presence. He glanced at the members of the human delegation behind him, his team of diplomats, engineers, and military officers. They were all silent, their eyes fixed on the queen, waiting for her to speak. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity, and Marcus could feel the pressure building inside him. He hated silence, especially in moments like this. It made the stakes seem even higher. The Veltran Empire had always been distant and secretive, rarely engaging with other species. Their military had crushed every attempted invasion or diplomatic mission sent their way. But now, for reasons no one fully understood, the Queen had agreed to meet with humanity. Marcus had been chosen as the lead negotiator because of his reputation as a no-nonsense diplomat who could think on his feet and adapt to any situation. But even he wasn't sure how to handle a ruler like Queen Celara. The Queen finally spoke, her voice like smooth silk, both soft and commanding. "You've come to offer us an alliance, Captain Holden, but I must ask, why should we trust humanity? Your species has a long history of war and greed. Why should we believe that you will not turn on us when the opportunity arises?" Marcus straightened up, taking a deep breath. He knew this was coming. The Veltrans were notorious for testing their visitors, pushing them to see if they would break under pressure. He had prepared for this moment, but it still felt different now that he was face to face with the Queen. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice steady but not without a hint of frustration. "Humanity has changed. We've fought wars, yes, but we've also learned from them. We've learned the value of peace, cooperation, and progress. We are not the same species we were hundreds of years ago. We want a future where we can work together, not against each other." The Queen's expression remained unreadable, but Marcus could see a flicker of something in her eyes. Interest, maybe? He wasn't sure. But he knew one thing: he had to keep going. The future of humanity depended on this moment. "But peace with you, Captain, comes at a cost," the Queen replied, her voice cold but still silky. "We do not give alliances lightly. What can you offer us that would make us trust you, make us believe your words?" Marcus hesitated. He wasn't prepared for this kind of questioning. He had studied the Veltrans, their culture, their history, but none of it had prepared him for this exact moment. What could he offer them? What could humanity offer that would be enough? As he thought, frustration bubbled up inside him. He couldn't stand the cold formality of this meeting anymore. The weight of the situation was making him feel like he was drowning. He had to say something. He had to break the tension. Without thinking, Marcus blurted out, "We don't need to play by your rules. We're humans. We say what we mean and we mean what we say. You want honesty? Fine, here it is. We're not here to bow down to you or to your empire. We're here because we want something better. We want a future where we can both thrive, not just survive." The words left his mouth before he could stop them. The room fell into absolute silence. The human delegation looked at him in shock, and even the Veltran attendants around the Queen flinched. Marcus felt his heart race as he realized what he had just said. It wasn't a diplomatic response. It wasn't calculated or polished. It was raw, unfiltered truth. The Queen, however, did not react as Marcus had expected. She did not scold him or show anger. Instead, she paused, studying him carefully. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, to Marcus's surprise, she smiled. It wasn't the smile of a politician or a ruler. It was something different. It was soft, almost like a secret being shared between them. "I see," she said, her voice now softer but still commanding. "You speak without thinking, Captain Holden. That is refreshing." Marcus blinked, unsure of what to say. Had he just made things worse? Or had he done something unexpected, something that would actually work in their favor. The Queen's smile only deepened as she stood up from her throne. "You know, Captain," she continued, her voice now more personal, "many have tried to negotiate with us, but none have been as honest as you. Perhaps there is more to humanity than I first thought." Marcus's mind raced. This was not how he had expected the conversation to go. The Queen's smile was unsettling, and the way she was looking at him now made him feel like he was the one being tested, not just his species. "Are you saying that you're willing to consider an alliance?" he asked cautiously, trying to keep his voice steady. The Queen nodded slowly, her eyes locked onto his. "Yes, I think I will consider it. But understand this, Captain, I do not make decisions like this lightly. If I agree to an alliance, it will not be because of your species' potential. It will be because of you." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't just talking about diplomacy or politics anymore. She was talking about him. Something in the air shifted, and Marcus realized that this meeting had just taken an unexpected turn. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined, and he wasn't sure if that was a good or bad thing. He took a deep breath and steadied himself. "I'm honored, Your Majesty, but I have to ask, why me? Why are you looking at me like this?" The Queen's smile widened and she stepped closer, her presence suddenly more overwhelming than ever. "Because, Captain Holden, you have something that no one else does. You have the ability to challenge me, to speak the truth without fear, and that is something I can respect." Marcus swallowed hard, suddenly feeling the weight of her words. This was no longer just a political negotiation. He was caught in a game with the Queen, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. "Are you saying that you're willing to form an alliance with humanity based on what I just said?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The Queen nodded once more, her smile still present. "Yes, Captain Holden, I will form an alliance with humanity, and I will do so with you. But remember, this is not just about politics. This is about power, and in the end, you must decide what kind of future you want to create." The room fell into silence once again. Marcus stood there, his mind racing as he processed what had just happened. He had come here to negotiate a treaty, but now it seemed like he had been pulled into something much bigger, something far more personal. The Queen had accepted him, not just as a diplomat, but as an individual. And now Marcus had to decide if he was ready to accept her, and the future she was offering. Marcus was still trying to wrap his mind around what had just happened. The Queen's acceptance of an alliance was unexpected, and her words, her smile, they kept playing in his mind over and over again. He had spoken without thinking, and yet it seemed to have worked. But now he found himself standing at the edge of something much bigger than just a political treaty. The Queen had seen something in him that no one else had, and that feeling left him uneasy. The human delegation left the hall in silence, all eyes on Marcus. His fellow diplomats, military officers, and engineers were whispering amongst themselves. No one spoke to him directly. He could feel their eyes on him, full of uncertainty. His boldness had surprised them all. Marcus couldn't blame them. Even he wasn't sure if he had done the right thing. "Captain Holden," one of the diplomats, Jason Miller, finally spoke up as they entered the secure room. His voice was low, cautious. "What exactly just happened in there?" Marcus ran a hand through his short, dark hair and sighed. "I don't know. I spoke the truth, that's all. It seems to have worked, though. The Queen is willing to consider an alliance." "But why you?" Jason pressed. "I've been here for 3 years, and we've never gotten this close to a deal. It wasn't your speech, Marcus. It was you." "What happened?" Marcus shook his head. "I don't know, Jason, but we need to focus on the alliance, not on me. This is bigger than just one person. It's about the future of humanity." Jason didn't look convinced, but he didn't push it further. The conversation shifted to the next steps in the negotiation. They had agreed on some preliminary terms, but no one really knew what those terms meant yet. The Queen had been vague, offering a promise of cooperation but little in terms of concrete action. For the next few days, Marcus was swept up in the whirlwind of intergalactic diplomacy. He met with various officials from the Veltran Empire, each more intimidating than the last. They were an ancient species, their empire stretching across many star systems. But no matter how much he tried to dig, Marcus couldn't get a clear answer on what the Queen actually wanted from humanity. There were moments when he thought she was testing him, pushing him to see if he would crack under pressure. Other times, he felt like she was genuinely interested in forming an alliance, though the reasons for that remained unclear. He found himself growing more and more intrigued by her, despite his better judgment. One evening, after a particularly exhausting round of meetings, Marcus found himself alone in his quarters. He was staring at a star map of the galaxy, tracing the different systems with his finger. The weight of the situation was pressing down on him. He had never been involved in something this complex, this important. The Queen had trusted him, but he wasn't sure if he could trust her in return. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Marcus stood up quickly, his heart racing. It wasn't like him to be caught off guard, but something about the knock made him nervous. He opened the door to find one of the Queen's personal attendants standing there. "Captain Holden," the attendant said in a soft, melodic voice. "The Queen requests your presence." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Now," the attendant nodded. "Yes, she wishes to speak with you." "It is important." Marcus hesitated for a moment, but something in the attendant's eyes told him that this was not a request he could ignore. "All right, lead the way." The attendant led him through the vast halls of the Veltran Palace. The walls seemed to stretch forever, adorned with intricate designs and glowing crystals that pulsed with energy. It was clear that the Veltrans had mastered technology far beyond anything humanity had achieved. And yet there was something ancient about their civilization, something that gave Marcus a sense of unease. They arrived at a large, circular chamber. The walls were made of a smooth, black material that seemed to absorb the light around them. In the center of the room stood the Queen, her posture regal and commanding. She was dressed in flowing robes of deep purple, and her presence filled the room, making everything else seem insignificant by comparison. "Captain Holden," the Queen greeted him with a small, knowing smile. "Thank you for coming." Marcus bowed his head slightly, trying to keep his composure. "Your Majesty, I came as soon as I was told." The Queen gestured for him to approach, and Marcus stepped forward, his boots echoing on the floor. "I wanted to speak with you privately, Captain. There are matters that need to be addressed." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. He had no idea what she wanted to discuss. But he knew it wouldn't be something simple. The Queen was always calculating, always thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead. "I'm listening," he said, his voice steady but tinged with curiosity. The Queen's smile widened, but there was something different about it now. It was more knowing, more intense. "You've made quite an impression on me, Captain. You are not like the others who have come to us, seeking an alliance. You speak with conviction, and your actions reflect that." Marcus swallowed hard, unsure of where this conversation was going. "I've only spoken the truth, Your Majesty. I've done what I thought was best for humanity." The Queen nodded slowly. "Yes, but there is more to this than simple diplomacy, Captain. You are a man who challenges me, who does not fear my power. That is rare among humans, and it is something I find intriguing." Marcus felt a flush of heat rise to his cheeks. Was she saying what he thought she was saying? The tension in the room seemed to grow heavier with every word. "I don't understand, Your Majesty," Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper. "What do you want from me?" The Queen took a step closer, her eyes locking with his. "I want you to understand that this alliance is not just about politics. It is personal, Captain. I am offering you something more than just a treaty. I am offering you the chance to be a part of something greater." Marcus's mind raced. He had no idea what she was talking about, but something about the way she said it made his heart beat faster. There was a weight to her words, a promise of power, but also something darker, something that he couldn't quite put his finger on. I don't know if I can accept that, Your Majesty," Marcus replied, his voice trembling slightly. "I came here to represent humanity. I can't just become part of your empire." The Queen's eyes softened just for a moment before her expression returned to its usual intensity. "No, Captain, you would not become part of my empire, but you would have a place within it, a place of power and influence. You would help guide humanity into a new era, a new future." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. This was no longer just about peace. It was about something much deeper, something he wasn't sure he was ready for. He had come here to negotiate for humanity's future, but now it seemed like he was being offered a chance at something far more dangerous. "I need time to think about this," he said, his voice firm. "I didn't come here for power. I came here for peace." The Queen nodded, her gaze never leaving his. "I understand. Take all the time you need, Captain, but understand this. You are not the same man who walked into this palace days ago. You have changed, and so has the future of humanity." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Marcus standing alone in the center of the room. Her words echoed in his mind, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just crossed a line from which there was no return. Marcus spent the next few days lost in thought. The Queen's words haunted him, replaying in his mind over and over again. He had come to the Veltran Palace with the goal of securing an alliance for humanity to ensure a future where both species could coexist. But now, it felt like the ground beneath him was shifting. The Queen wasn't just offering peace, she was offering something deeper, something personal, and that made him uncomfortable. He had spent most of his life serving humanity, doing what was right for his people. He had never once been tempted by power or personal gain. But the Queen had a way of making him question everything. Her words about power, about influence, lingered in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that accepting her offer could change everything, for better or worse. But he wasn't sure if he was ready for that. Could he trust her? Could he trust himself if he gave in to the temptation of her proposal? The days passed quickly, and before he knew it, it was time for another meeting with the Queen. Marcus knew he couldn't avoid it forever. The future of humanity rested on these negotiations, and he had a duty to his people. He couldn't let personal emotions cloud his judgment. Still, as he walked through the palace corridors toward the throne room, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to make a choice that would change the course of history. The room was even more intimidating than the last time he had entered it. The black stone walls seemed to close in on him, the soft glow of the crystals making the air feel thick with power. And there, sitting on her throne, was the Queen. Her eyes met his as he approached, and she smiled that same knowing smile. It was a smile that both comforted and unnerved him. "Captain Holden," she greeted him, her voice calm but with an undercurrent of something more. "I'm glad you came." Marcus took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "Your Majesty, I came because we need to talk." "About the alliance." The Queen's eyes sparkled with a hint of amusement. "Yes, of course, but it's more than just an alliance, isn't it, Captain? You know that." Marcus stiffened at her words. She was right, of course. It wasn't just about the alliance anymore. The Queen had made that clear, and now he was standing here feeling the weight of her gaze like never before. "I want to understand your intentions," Marcus said, his voice steady but firm. "What exactly are you offering humanity, and why me?" The Queen leaned forward, her expression unreadable. "You are asking the right questions, Captain, but understand this. I offer you more than just a political alliance. I offer you a chance to be part of something greater than yourself. Something that could change the future of both our species." Marcus clenched his fists at his sides. "I didn't come here for power, Your Majesty. I came to secure a future for humanity. Peace, not conquest." The Queen's smile faded slightly, but she didn't seem angry. Instead, she seemed thoughtful. "You misunderstand me, Captain. I do not seek conquest. What I offer is an opportunity, a chance for you and your people to rise, to stand alongside us as equals. But to do that, you must see the truth. The universe is not a place for weakness. If humanity is to survive and thrive, it must change. And you, Captain Holden, are the key to that change." Marcus's mind raced. He wanted to ask so many questions. What did she mean by that? What kind of change was she talking about? But something in the way she spoke, the way she looked at him, made him hesitate. It felt like this conversation was more than just about politics. It felt personal. And that scared him. "I'm not sure I understand, Your Majesty," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully. "What exactly are you asking of me?" The Queen stood up from her throne, walking slowly toward him. Her presence was overwhelming, as always, but this time there was something different about her. There was a warmth in her gaze, a softness that wasn't there before. "I am asking you to understand that we are not so different, you and I," she said, her voice quiet but intense. "You are a man of conviction, Captain. You speak the truth even when it's difficult. That is rare among your kind. But in this universe, that kind of honesty is what leads to power." Marcus shook his head, struggling to make sense of her words. "I don't want power, I want peace. I want to make sure that humanity has a future." "And peace is what I offer," the Queen replied, her tone unwavering. "But it's not the kind of peace you think. The galaxy is a dangerous place. If humanity is to survive, you must learn to be strong, to fight for what you want. And I can help you do that. Together, we can create a future where both of our species are unstoppable." Marcus stared at her, his mind spinning. Her words made sense in some ways, but they also made him uneasy. Was she asking him to betray his own values? Was she trying to lure him into something darker? "I'm not sure I can accept your offer, Your Majesty," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I came here to make a deal, not to be part of some grand plan for power." The queen's smile returned, but this time it was different. It was softer, more understanding. I know, Captain, and I respect that. But understand this, what I offer is not just a deal. It's a chance for you to rise above the limitations of your species, to become something greater than what you are now. And I will not ask you to make that decision alone. You must decide for yourself what kind of future you want to create. Marcus felt a cold shiver run down his spine. She was offering him power, yes, but at what cost? He couldn't help but wonder if there was more to her intentions than she was letting on. But the longer he stood there looking at her, the more he felt the weight of her words. She was right about one thing: humanity needed to change. The universe was a harsh place, and if they were to survive, they had to be stronger, smarter, more capable. But did that mean they had to sacrifice their principles? The queen watched him closely, her eyes never leaving his. It felt like she was waiting for him to make a choice, but the decision wasn't as simple as she made it seem. There was so much more at stake than just an alliance or power. There was trust, there was loyalty, and there was the future of humanity itself. I need time, Marcus said, his voice strained. I need time to think about what you've said. I don't make decisions like this lightly. The queen's expression softened, and she nodded. I understand. You are not the kind of man who makes decisions based on emotion alone. Take your time, Captain, but remember the future is always in motion. The decisions you make now will shape what comes next. With that, she turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing in the silence of the room. Marcus stood there, his mind racing, his heart heavy. He had come here to negotiate a peace treaty, but now he found himself at a crossroads. The Queen had given him an offer, one that could change everything for humanity. But at what cost? Was it worth it? As he left the throne room and made his way back to his quarters, Marcus couldn't help but feel like he was standing on the edge of something he didn't fully understand. The future of humanity was in his hands. But the question was, what kind of future would he choose? Marcus couldn't sleep that night. The weight of the decision he had to make pressed down on him like a stone. The Queen's words echoed in his mind, each one more confusing than the last. She had offered him a chance at power, at something beyond what humanity had ever known. But at what cost? Could he accept her offer and still remain true to himself? To humanity. He had always been a man of principle, a diplomat who believed in peace, in cooperation between species. But the Queen had shown him something new, something powerful. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and humanity was still so young, so vulnerable. Could they afford to stay weak? Could they afford not to rise to the challenge? The next day, Marcus was once again summoned to the Queen's presence. He had spent hours trying to come to a decision, but nothing seemed clear. His mind was filled with questions, doubts, and fears. The future of humanity hung in the balance, and he was the one who had to make the choice. As he walked through the grand hallways of the Veltran Palace, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in on him. He was entering a world that was not his own, a world that was far older and more powerful than anything humanity had ever known. He was walking a fine line, torn between the promises of strength and the fear of losing everything he believed in. When he entered the throne room, the Queen was already waiting for him. Her presence was as commanding as ever, but today there was something different about her. She seemed more distant, more focused, as if she were waiting for him to make his move. Captain Holden, she greeted him, her voice smooth but tinged with something darker. I see you have had time to think. Marcus nodded, taking a deep breath before speaking. I've thought about what you said, a lot. I know that humanity has to change. We can't keep hiding behind the walls we've built. The universe doesn't care about our ideals. It cares about strength. The Queen's eyes glinted with something like approval. You are beginning to understand, Captain. The universe is not kind to the weak. But it is kind to those who are willing to adapt, to those who are willing to take power when it is offered. Marcus clenched his fists at his sides, trying to control the surge of emotion that was rising within him. But at what cost? You're asking me to abandon everything I believe in, to betray my people's trust. The Queen stood up from her throne, her movements graceful and fluid. She walked toward him slowly, each step calculated, deliberate. I am not asking you to betray your people. I am asking you to help them rise to a new level of power, to guide them into a future where they are not weak, where they can stand with us as equals. She stopped just in front of him, her gaze never leaving his. You have already seen what we are capable of. You have felt the power of our empire. We are offering you the chance to become part of that power to shape the future of the galaxy." Marcus swallowed hard, his mind racing. The Queen was right about one thing: humanity had to change. The universe was full of dangers, and they couldn't afford to stay weak. But was it worth sacrificing their values, their morals, just to gain power? Was it worth becoming something they had always feared? "I don't know if I can do this," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "I don't know if I can become part of your empire. I don't know if I can accept the kind of future you're offering." The Queen's expression softened, but there was no mistaking the steel behind her words. "You don't have to make this decision alone, Captain. I have shown you the path, but it is up to you to walk it. If you choose to accept, you will be part of something greater than yourself. You will help shape the future of humanity. You will lead them to power, to strength." Her voice became quieter, more personal. "But if you refuse, if you choose to stay in the past, to cling to your ideals and your fear of power, you will condemn humanity to a future of weakness. You will watch as they are crushed by forces they cannot even begin to understand." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The Queen wasn't just offering him power, she was offering him responsibility. The weight of that responsibility was heavy, and he wasn't sure if he was ready to bear it. But as he stood there, looking into the Queen's eyes, he knew that this decision would define everything. "You're asking me to become something I'm not," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're asking me to give up everything I've worked for." The Queen took a step closer to him, her presence overwhelming. "I am asking you to become more than what you are now. To embrace the future, to embrace the power that you and your people deserve. You have a choice, Captain. You can either lead humanity into a new era, or you can watch as they are left behind." Marcus's heart was pounding in his chest. The Queen's words were powerful, and they made sense in some ways. Humanity had always been at the mercy of stronger forces, and now, for the first time, they had a chance to stand on equal footing with the most powerful empire in the galaxy. But was that really the future he wanted for them? "I don't want to lose myself in this," Marcus said, his voice strained. "I don't want to become something I'm not. I don't want to forget who I am." The Queen reached out, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "You will not lose yourself, Captain. You will only become stronger. You will become the man who leads humanity to a brighter future. A future where your species is no longer at the mercy of others. A future where you stand tall, side by side with us." Marcus closed his eyes, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He had always believed in peace, in diplomacy, in working together. But now he was being asked to embrace a future of power, of strength, of dominance. Could he really accept that? "I need more time," Marcus said, his voice shaky. "I can't make this decision now. I need to think." The Queen's expression hardened, but she did not push him. "Of course, Captain, you will have all the time you need, but understand this: the window for this decision is closing. The future is always in motion, and the choices you make now will determine what comes next." With those final words, she turned and walked away, leaving Marcus standing alone in the center of the room. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air, and Marcus felt more lost than ever. The future of humanity was in his hands, and he wasn't sure if he was strong enough to shape it. As he left the throne room, he couldn't help but feel like he was standing at the edge of something much bigger than himself. He had always been a man of ideals, of principles. But now, he was being asked to choose between those ideals and the future of humanity. Could he really accept the Queen's offer? Could he abandon everything he had ever believed in just to secure a future of power? Or would he stand firm in his beliefs, even if it meant risking everything? He didn't know the answer yet. But he knew one thing for sure: whatever decision he made, it would change everything. The days that followed were a blur for Marcus. He couldn't shake the decision that weighed on his mind, the choice that was being forced upon him. The Queen had given him the chance to lead humanity into a new era of power, to join forces with her and rise above the limitations of his species. But every time he thought about it, every time he imagined what that future might look like, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of unease. It wasn't just about the alliance anymore. It wasn't even about the power. It was about what he would have to sacrifice to get there. What would he lose if he took the Queen's offer? Would he lose his own soul, his humanity? The Queen had made it clear that time was running out. The future was always in motion, and the decisions they made now would shape what came next. The pressure was mounting, and with every passing day it became harder to see a way forward. He had always believed in peace, in cooperation, but now, The path seemed so much more complicated. He found himself walking the palace halls again, the familiar weight of his thoughts pressing down on him. It was as if the walls themselves were closing in, reminding him that the decision was approaching. He had to choose, and soon. When Marcus arrived at the throne room, the queen was already waiting for him. She stood at the center of the room, her back straight, her eyes focused on something only she could see. As soon as she turned to face him, Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. There was something different about her today, something colder, more commanding. "Captain Holden," she greeted him, her voice smooth but laced with an edge of impatience. "I trust you have had enough time to think about the future I've offered you." Marcus nodded slowly, his mind still in turmoil. He had thought about it long and hard, weighed every possible outcome, but the decision remained just out of reach. "I've thought about it, but I'm still not sure, Your Majesty. The choice you're asking me to make, it's not easy." The queen's eyes darkened just for a moment before her expression returned to its usual calm. "I understand your hesitation, Captain, but understand this. This is not a decision you can delay any longer. The future of humanity is at stake. If you are not willing to embrace the power we offer, then what are you willing to do to ensure your people's survival?" Marcus felt the weight of her words settle over him like a thick fog. She was right about one thing: humanity's survival was at risk. The galaxy was full of threats, threats that they couldn't fight off with diplomacy alone. And yet, the power the Queen was offering felt so far removed from the humanity he had known, from the ideals he had lived by. "I don't want to change what humanity is," he said quietly, looking down at the floor. "I don't want to make us something we're not just to survive." The Queen stepped forward, her presence overwhelming. "Survival requires more than just the will to live, Captain. It requires strength. It requires the ability to fight back when the universe seeks to crush you. You cannot afford to cling to your ideals when the stakes are this high." She reached out, lifting his chin so that their eyes met. "I am offering you the chance to ensure that humanity will not be weak. I am offering you the chance to help your people rise, to shape a future where they will not just survive, but thrive. You have the power to lead them. All you need to do is accept." Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The Queen's words were persuasive, and they made sense. He had always believed that humanity had the potential to do great things, to rise above their past mistakes. But the price of that future, the price of that power, was more than he was willing to pay. "I'm not sure I can accept your offer, Your Majesty," Marcus said, his voice strained. "I don't want to sacrifice everything we stand for just to gain power. If we lose what makes us human, what's the point of surviving at all?" The Queen's gaze softened for a moment, but her voice remained firm. "I understand your fear, Captain, but you are thinking in terms of the old ways, the ways of the past. Humanity cannot afford to cling to outdated ideals when the galaxy is changing around you. If you choose to reject this path, you will only be condemning your people to a future where they are powerless, where they are nothing more than prey." Marcus felt a pang in his chest. She was right in a way. Humanity had always been the underdog, always fighting to prove their worth. But this was different. This wasn't just about fighting for a place in the galaxy. It was about what kind of people they would become in the process. "You don't understand," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "I'm not afraid of power. I'm afraid of losing ourselves. I'm afraid that in the end we'll become just like every other empire, consumed by the same hunger for control." The Queen's eyes darkened, and for a moment Marcus thought he saw something else behind her gaze. A flicker of doubt, perhaps. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the same cool, calculating look that had defined her throughout their meetings. "I am not asking you to become like every other empire, Captain," she said coldly. "I am offering you the chance to create something new, something that has never been done before. You have the power to shape the future of humanity, to ensure that your species will never be weak again." Marcus took a step back, his mind spinning. The Queen was right in some ways. Humanity had always struggled, always fought to find their place in the universe. But was it worth giving up everything they had worked for? Was it worth trading their soul for strength? The silence in the room grew heavy, and Marcus could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He had spent his whole life fighting for peace, for a future where humanity could live in harmony with other species. But now, that dream seemed distant, impossible. The universe was a place where strength ruled, and maybe, just maybe, that was the only way humanity could survive. "I don't know if I can do this," Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible. The Queen's gaze softened again, and this time there was no trace of the cold distance that usually characterized her. You are not alone, Captain. You do not have to make this choice by yourself. I am offering you the chance to lead humanity, to shape a future where your people will never be at the mercy of others. You have the strength within you to make this decision. Marcus looked at her, his heart heavy with the weight of the decision. He had always believed in humanity's potential, in their ability to rise above their flaws and mistakes. But this was different. This wasn't just about survival, it was about what kind of future they would create. Could he really accept the Queen's offer? Could he embrace the power that would come with it, even if it meant losing everything he had ever believed in? He took a deep breath, his mind racing. The future of humanity was at stake, and in the end, it was his choice to make. I will accept your offer, he said, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. But only if we do it on our terms. We will not become like every other empire. We will remain true to our ideals, our values. If we're going to rise, we will do it as humanity, not as something else. The Queen's eyes lit up with approval. Very well, Captain, you have made your choice. Together we will ensure that humanity's future will be a bright one. But remember this, power is not given freely. It must be earned, fought for, and once you accept, there is no turning back. Marcus nodded, the weight of his decision settling on him. He had made his choice. The future was no longer uncertain. The road ahead would be difficult, and there would be challenges, but he was ready. For the first time in a long while, he felt certain about the path he had chosen.